Hello, magic makers, and welcome back to the Metaphysical Apothecary. We are your hosts, Megan and Shannon. We are also known as the Scorpio Sisters, and we are here to explore the mysterious, magical, and the arcane. Anyone who isn't able to get outside, anyone who isn't able to be around nature, anyone who isn't able to do certain things because of sensory issues or because of just the physical mobility limitations, that doesn't make your magic any less powerful. Just because you can't go on a 3-mile-long nature hike for whatever reason doesn't mean you can't experience nature. It just means you're going to experience it differently than those who can go on that hike. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Nature happens everywhere, not just out in the wilderness, not just out in the parks. It happens everywhere. You're in the city and there's a plant or a weed or something growing in the crack of the sidewalk. There's nature. Birds are flying overhead. There's nature. Clouds are moving overhead. There's nature. Even if you only are exposed to humans interacting with other humans, there's nature. We are an integral part of nature. We are not separate from it. And nature is not separate from us.
Right? If your way of honoring nature, like if you follow Artemis, but it's impossible for you for one reason or another to get out into the forest, and you love exploring the forest through YouTube videos, and maybe to enhance that experience, you put some cypress or juniper essential oil in a diffuser so that you have a full sensory experience. That sounds powerful as hell. The other thing that a lot of people in the magical community get kind of bombarded with is the capitalistic side of it, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
A new crystal becomes popular in social media and suddenly everyone feels the pressure to go out and purchase that crystal and use it for a specific thing. Moldavite is the most recent one, I think. And as a result of that, Moldavite is extremely expensive. I've heard stories about people being sold fake Moldavite, counterfeit Moldavite. And you know what? There are a lot of people who really just aren't ready to use Moldavite. I include myself in that. And there are other ways to explore your fears and your shadows rather than taking a baseball bat to your own spiritual eggshell and just letting everything come spilling out.
Humpty Dumpty, right?
Yes.
There's no way to put it back together again. I tend to buy crystals that feel right for me in that moment. So I don't even look at the names and shape. Until after I've chosen which stone I'm buying. The only stone that I am currently obsessed with is Shunite.
Yes.
And that's because we are living in a 4G, 5G world, and Shunite had some studies show that it helps reduce, if not reflect, the radiation from those devices.
Right.
And I feel like that's something I need in my life because I have 2 laptops, a smartphone, a tablet, and living around a bunch of other power lines and people who have all the same things.
Right, exactly. I do the same thing with crystals. I mean, I do look at the name and the meaning of the crystal afterwards, but I kind of go by what I'm attracted to and what I feel I need in the moment. No one should ever be pressured to feel like they have to have crystals to be a good witch, or they have to have a wand made of a certain kind of wood, or they have to have a pewter vessel. Primordial witchcraft, original witchcraft, if you go back to the origins of human beings, and the origins of magical practice and witchcraft, all magic was free. Every magical tool you can think of was free. Wands were just sticks of wood that you picked up off the ground and carved yourself. If you needed crystals, you could find them in caves, or you could just pick up regular rocks. Regular rocks? Oh my gosh. I love regular rocks. I have so many rocks from just outside. The first pendulums were a needle and thread or a necklace on a chain.
As practitioners, we think we have to go to a new age or witch shop in order to get our supplies. Instead, could just go to a dollar store. You could go to a thrift store. You can go to, SD has some really good deals that you're giving straight to the maker, the creator, instead of going through a middleman. Antique stores that might end up giving you something interesting that would be good for your craft that you wouldn't find anywhere else because it's too old to be produced anymore. Walmart or Target might have things that work without having to spend, arm, leg, liver on your firstborn child.
Yep. I folded my hands over my heart when you said antique store. If you want tools that feel ancient and have some real energy and history to them, go to a secondhand store or an antique shop. You never know what you're going to find there in terms of amazing magical tools. If using magical tools does not feel right to you, you don't have to use them.
Nope.
Your finger is a wand. Your hand is a wand. And that's all you really need. You can chant or sing or speak to raise the energy and then use your hands and your body to direct it.
Magic is really very, very inclusive.
Yes.
It's inclusive for neurodivergence, mental illness, physical disabilities, as well as financial hardships. You do not need to be rich to be a witch.
Exactly. In terms of the fluffy bunny question.
I don't mind using the fluffy bunny designation, but that's also because I consider myself a fluffy bunny on my own path. And I have a very broad view that everyone is a fluffy bunny on their own path. You could be on your path for 50 years and you're still a fluffy bunny.
Right.
Because you're still learning, you're still adapting, you're still living your life. And that requires some learning and adapting every day.
Exactly.
I have no problem with this label, but I do know that others do. They get offended by being called a fluffy bunny. So please know that this is not meant to antagonize. This is inclusive of myself and Megan, that fluffy bunny, spotting a fluffy bunny, and how fluffy or how new the bunny hop is inclusive to us as well.
Right. I was the fluffiest of fluffy bunnies when I started on my pagan path. I must have fallen for every time someone who seemed more authoritative in the magical community said something to me, I took it to heart, 100% to heart, and I ran with it. It took me not terribly long, but it took me a good couple of months to figure out that not only was that not necessary, it was causing me a lot of anxiety. It was causing a lot of triggering of my very, very fresh trauma from the Christian community and leaving Christian dogma. So when I use the term fluffy bunny, it's also in a very loving, very affectionate manner. We were all fluffy bunnies once. And as Shannon just said, we are all still fluffy bunnies in some ways, at least in our practice today. We should welcome and respect the baby witches and the fluffy bunnies. And we should be sort of watching out for them, right? And again, this is like Megan's confession time right now. When I was a couple years into my craft, but still not fully realized as a witch, I had a very condescending view of people that I called dabblers. People who would go into New Age shops and buy a couple of crystals and a pack of tarot cards, looked nervous and scared the whole time they were doing it. I would always think to myself, well, what are you even doing here? Very nasty. And now I come to realize I was that person who was nervous buying crystals and a pack of tarot cards. I was that dabbler who was dipping their toes into something that was fascinating, but also terrifying because of what I had been told about that particular area of exploration. So when we see a fluffy bunny, a dabbler, a baby witch, I would ask all of us more experienced witches who are self-acknowledged fluffy bunnies now to watch out for them and to support them.
Because they're going to be the ones who get hit hardest by the trolls and the gatekeepers who shouldn't be gatekeeping versus the ones who should be gatekeeping.
Exactly. If we see that someone who's new to the craft is being bullied or gaslit or trolled, we can separate them from the person who's harming them, make sure that they're okay, and answer any questions that they have.
Allow them the room to ask those questions, the room to not know instantaneously what they want to practice, what they want to study, what their path looks like. To explore and bend around a little bit in order to figure out, well, what interests me the most? What steps should I take next?
Exactly.
I think they are some of the best people out there to help me learn or relearn something that I may have forgotten or put down or just never picked up. And when they're around asking those questions, my curiosity, my desire to know the answer gets lit. It gets inspired by them being brave enough to confront an experienced fluffy bunny witch versus an inexperienced fluffy bunny witch.
Yeah, they can be our teachers as much as we can help and teach them, and we can allow them the room to explore and then gently guide them toward resources that helped us. Instead of trying to explain it ourselves, we can let them discover it for themselves. This is a book that I really love and really made some of the points that you're asking about clear to me. So here, let me recommend this to you. When you pay a little bit more attention to newer witches, and they start talking about doing something that could be misguided or even harmful or dangerous to themselves, we can step in and say, you might want to think about that a little bit more before you do it.
Just think a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. But there are also more practical things that we can help steer them against. For instance, anyone doing blood magic should know how to do that safely. If you know anything about blood magic or even just medical matters and you hear someone talking about using an athame to use their blood to blood scry or something of that nature, you can step in and say, how are you planning on doing that? Give them pointers for doing it safely and do a little probing to make sure that they're ready for something like that, because it can be a trip. If you're not careful with the blood scrying, it can be really traumatic experience.
In more ways than one.
Yeah. We don't want anyone to get tetanus. We don't want anyone to sever a tendon. And we don't want anyone to have an oracular experience that they're not ready for.
Mm-hmm. While we call it fluffy bunny designation, bunnies can actually be very terrifying, especially the feral bunnies. I know bunnies that would actually purposely antagonize big dogs and then attack their fates when they got too close. So the designation of a fluffy bunny does not take away from the ferocity of a person, whether or not they are experienced or inexperienced as a practitioner.
Right. They could be way more powerful than we imagine. Just because someone's cautious about dipping their toes into the pagan pool doesn't mean that this isn't the place they should be. And they could have some really hidden depths that could be super empowering once they uncover them, not only to themselves, but to the community at large.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes they'll do it in self-defense, and sometimes they'll do it just for shits and giggles. Just like the bunny I'm talking about.
Something else is that every spook or will-o'-the-wisp, any supernatural thing we encounter, we can fall into the trap of believing that they are somehow personally tied to us and our destiny, because that's what the movies and Hollywood have told us, right? If you are magical and you encounter something magical, it's a side quest. Except we live in a world that is inherently entangled with magic. So if you do meet a supernatural or magical being, that's fantastic. Definitely put that down in your book of shadows. Explore that a little more. Communicate with it if it wants to be communicated with and it's safe, but it's not necessarily personally connected to you and your path.
Also, this happens with witches and non-witches alike. Every bump and creak in the house means that you're haunted or you have a demon inside your house.
Yep.
Explore it, research it, do the practical legwork first.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can start exploring the paranormal side of it. Is this really a ghost or is it a visitation? Is it part of my spiritual entourage that is trying to get my attention? Is it a messenger? Is it a demon or is it a negative entity of some sort? You can work through those relatively easily. I still do it where I get perked up and like, oh, that was a creep. Oh, wait. All right. Okay. Follow the practical first before you get overly excited.
Yeah. We just want to live in the fairy tale. That's one of the reasons why so many pagans flock to this path is we want to live in the fairy tale. Yeah. But, it might not be a ghost.
No.
It might be raccoons in your attic.
Squirrels in the walls.
Mm-hmm. Could be your cat being a cat.
Or be pipes. The house settling. Practical debunking is much appreciated before you get hyped up on the potentials, paranormal and magical, coming into play.
Yeah. My sister actually has a spot on her kitchen floor where if you stand on it and you rock back and forth, it sounds like chains clanking under the floor, which is creepy and exciting. But in reality, it's a pipe that disconnected from an old plumbing system and just left there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just clanking against the underside of the floor when you walk over it. One of the pitfalls that new witches and experienced witches can fall into is once you start practicing and digging into the spiritual world, you're going to uncover spiritual and paranormal presences that you weren't aware of before. In places that may surprise you, you might encounter them in a grocery store that was built on a site that is particularly rich in spiritual energy, or our college was a nexus for spiritual activity as well. It's a hard lesson to learn, but not every ghost, spook, or specter or supernatural creature is personally connected to your destiny. We want them to be.
They are not necessarily hallmarks on your path. They're not directional signs or guides. Not all of them.
If you start to practice and that stirs up the spiritual energy in your home and you realize that you have a ghost that was dormant and is now kind of being shaken loose by your magical activity, that doesn't mean that the ghost is one of your past incarnations, an ancestor, or, as Shannon said, a guide of some kind. It could just mean that you had a ghost you weren't aware of.
Mm-hmm. In certain areas, you have a ghost, it's being shaken up by your craft and your practices. You might have to take into consideration when they live. If you're living in New England and you're living in a relatively old house and you whip out tarot cards were a sign of the devil for most pilgrims. And if a family house has suffered the trauma of the witch hunt, you might end up shaking up a spirit or two because they're concerned for the safety of you and the house that other people won't persecute you.
Uh-huh.
They're not a guide. They're not part of your spiritual path.
Right. Now, if you feel especially connected to these beings and would like to know if they are connected to you personally in some way, if they have come around because they want to work with you in some way, you can devise a ritual or a guidepost or a signpost of some sort that they can interact with to help you determine what their role is going to be, if they have one. There could just be a house spirit that just takes care of that house. There have been a lot of immigrants, especially in the United States. There are a lot of places globally that are melting pots. It would be very easy for a domovoi from Russia to still be living in someone's home, taking care of the house because they came over with immigrants from Moscow, because that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the point of the pagan community, right? It's an inclusive space. It's a place where we can all kind of dip into the energy of the cosmos and create a personal path. And we're big on that here. We're big on that on this channel. If you want to learn more about creating a toolkit of really eclectic and inexpensive magical tools, our podcast on magpie magic and embracing the chaos is fantastic for that. There's so many little fun things that we do in there. You know, this is also true for people from every single walk of life. No one should ever be excluded or made to feel like they don't belong in the pagan community because they're queer or they're not queer, because they come from a certain background, because they're a specific ethnicity, any of those things. Because the more people that we have in this community sharing energy, sharing tradition, sharing knowledge, and sharing ideas, the richer we all become, the more powerful we all become, and the more grounded in our convictions and our spirituality we all become.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we have on the topic for today. Thank you so much for listening in, and we hope you'll join us again. In the meantime, you can follow us on our blog for some more witchy wisdom, as well as check out some of our original art on Society 6 for sacred decor and more. Thank you again for joining us, and go make some magic and live your best life. Bye.
Bye, everyone.